Should the federal government have the power to take control of the internet? Well, some members of Congress say yes.
Well, Gordon, but others fear it would give the government free rein to limit free speech. Jennifer Wishon explains.
Senate Majority Leader Harry Reid has called it a top priority of this session of Congress: cyberspace security, legislation that would allow the president to flip a virtual switch, shutting down parts of the internet in the case of a severe cyber attack or national emergency.
This is a matter of national security.
During the last session of Congress, Senator Joe Lieberman introduced the Protecting Cyberspace as a National Asset Act. Critics quickly nicknamed it the Kill Switch Bill.
A cyber attack on America can do as much or more damage today by incapacitating our banks, our communications, our finance, our transportation, as a conventional war attack.
Supporters say the government needs this power because national infrastructure systems are now tied to the internet. But some fear the legislation is an attempt by government to get its hooks into the internet, giving it the power to limit free speech or silence political communication. Fears that have only gained steam since the Egyptian government shut down internet service during the recent citizen uprising in an effort to stop communication on social networking sites like Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube.
The internet played a huge role in the Egyptian uprising. You know, for example, between January 15th and January 25th, I was looking at a statistic, close to 5 million Egyptians logged on and created an account on Facebook.
Seton Motley, president of Less Government, says the private sector doesn't need the government's help to fend off cyber attacks.
The kill switch bill is, okay, gee, in the event of a cyber attack, we must have government partner with the private sector to deal with it. Well, wait a minute. That, first of all, assumes that there aren't any cyber attacks going on. There's 100,000 a day. The reason we don't hear about them is because the internet service providers, all by their lonesome, handle it so expertly and so remotely from our experience that we never hear about them.
Senator Lieberman says critics should relax and read the bill. He says neither the president nor the government will ever take over the internet.
If it's really upside down, I want the guys that have been handling it all along, who understand the networks, who know how to fend off attacks, to deal with it.
Senator Lieberman hasn't said whether he'll reintroduce the bill in this Congress. Motley says it's unlikely the new Republican majority in the House would pass it, but critics worry that eventually some member of Congress may try again. Jennifer Wishon, CBN News, Washington.
Well, I hope they don't try again. This is something that the private sector needs to be handling. And if there's sensitive government things, and if there's sensitive infrastructure things, they should just be disconnected from the internet. And that way you don't have to worry about cyber attacks getting to critical infrastructure, say at a nuclear power plant. There's no reason for that kind of facility to have its main systems logged on. And so that's the best way to solve this problem without giving the government control of something that we all want, free speech. Lee Webb has the rest of our top stories from the CBN Newsroom. Lee?
Gordon, Republican governors promised to cut spending and balance budgets when they ran for office last year. And to do that, they're having to take on public employee unions. The battle is already underway in the state of Wisconsin, where new Governor Scott Walker is trying to take away the union's power of collective bargaining, as well as their sharp increases in health care and pension payments. And as you can see here, thousands of public employees turned out to protest. Democrats refused to vote on Walker's plan, literally fleeing the state Thursday and hiding out in Illinois. But Walker is sticking to his guns here. A similar proposal in Ohio has also drawn protest, and the same for Tennessee and Indiana, where Republicans are trying to restrict the bargaining rights of teacher unions. A standout high school wrestler in Iowa has refused to take part in the state tournament because his match was against a girl. He says that would have violated his conscience and faith. So Joel Northrup defaulted on his match with Cassie Herkelman. He said later he does not think boys should compete against girls in the state tournament in that sport. Joel is a homeschooled sophomore, his father a Pentecostal minister. The family knew ahead of time that Joel was pitted against a girl, but the father left the decision up to his son.
There's certainly no scriptures that specifically address this, and there's nothing doctrinal and nothing church-based. I just believe this is a principled decision. Joel believes, based on his conscience and his faith, that girls should be treated with dignity and respect. And you know, taking nothing away from those two female athletes, but wrestling's a combat sport.
Northrup will be allowed to compete in consolation rounds, giving him a chance for a third-place finish. Another huge rally in Egypt today, but this one had something new. Egyptian Islamic Sheikh Youssef El-Qaradawi addressed tens of thousands gathered in Tahrir Square, congratulating them on their victory and saying this: "The revolution is not over until we have a new Egypt." El-Qaradawi has long been an influential Islamic leader in Egypt. He's had a TV show on Al Jazeera there for 15 years. And for more on this controversial figure, let's go back to Gordon.
Well, with us now from Washington is CBN's terrorism analyst, Eric Stakelback. Eric, welcome back.
Gordon, great to be here.
Tell us about this sheikh. I understand he's sort of the televangelist of the Muslim world.
Yeah, Gordon, he's referred to as the rock star of the Arab and Muslim world. His program on Al Jazeera, Sharia and Life, reaches millions and millions of Muslims across the region. And he's a guy who really has a lot of respect among radical Muslims as a religious figure. Now, when he speaks, Gordon, today at the rally, he spoke in really moderate tones, talked about unity among all Egyptians and democracy. That's all part of the strategy. There's a concept that our viewers have to remember when a guy like Youssef Al-Qaradawi talks. That concept is taqiyya. This is a concept in Islam that means deception. Deceive your enemies until you are strong enough to take over. Youssef Qaradawi spoke very moderately today, but in the past, Gordon, he's spoken in support of suicide bombings against Israeli civilians, against U.S. troops in Iraq. He's spoken in support of wife-beating, and he even said on his show recently that the one thing he wants to do before he dies is to kill a Jew.
Well, obviously somebody's got a clue on him because he's been banned from coming to the United States since 1999. Now, that's before 9/11. Why is he banned from the U.S.?
Well, he's banned from the U.S., Gordon, for his consistent pro-terrorist rhetoric and his ties to everyone from al-Qaeda to, yes, the Muslim Brotherhood. He is acknowledged as the spiritual leader of the Muslim Brotherhood. As a matter of fact, in 2002, the Brotherhood in Egypt, which, as we see, may very well seize power there, offered Qaradawi their position as the leader of the Egyptian Muslim Brotherhood. He actually turned that offer down because he's got a pretty sweet gig going there at Al Jazeera, and he can have even more influence, not only in Egypt, but across the Middle East with his pro-jihad rhetoric.
Well, he's 84 years old. How likely is it that he's going to be leading some kind of political movement in Egypt?
That's a really interesting question, Gordon. I think what we see here is a kind of Ayatollah Khomeini to Iran movement. If you remember back in 1979, the Ayatollah Khomeini was exiled in France. At the tail end of the Iranian Revolution, he returned, a triumphant return to a mob, a massive crowd in Tehran. He became the face of the Iranian Revolution. Right now in Egypt, there's no face. There's been no charismatic leader to emerge to lead that revolution. I'm not saying Qaradawi could actually run a country, but he could be sort of a kingmaker, a guy who is the public face of the revolution, who pushes the Muslim Brotherhood agenda, which obviously is very dangerous. And a really interesting thing here, Gordon, about this rally today, Qaradawi wasn't invited by radical Muslims to speak at this rally. He was invited by a group of secular Egyptians.
Well, explain to our viewers, why was he kicked out of Egypt? Why is this, it's 30 years since he last prayed in the square. Why?
Yeah, this is the same reason he's banned from the U.S., Gordon, because it's his consistent pro-terrorist support and rhetoric. The Egyptian government saw him as a threat to the state. He was linked to several leading terrorists in Egypt, so he's been banned. It's really amazing how this has all played out. Just a week ago, Mubarak was president. This would have never happened. Qaradawi would have never been able to set foot on Egyptian soil. Not only set foot on Egyptian soil, he actually today had a military escort. This would have never happened. What a difference a week makes in the post-Mubarak world. And this is the threat, Gordon. I just returned from Israel, spoke to senior officials there. This is the threat. This is the concern that a guy like Qaradawi, with his agenda, with his views, which are viciously anti-American, anti-Israel, could gain great influence there.
Now, maybe our viewers don't know. He on his television show literally prayed that Allah would destroy every last Israeli. And he's calling for a new genocide. And he actually refers back to Babylon, and he refers to Hitler, and he calls it punishment. The Holocaust was punishment for by Allah for the Jews. And he says the next one coming, he hopes, will be at the hands of the faithful. And if you're in Israel today and you're seeing what's developing in Egypt, what are you thinking? Are you thinking the treaty's secure? Are you thinking you're going to have a big problem in Egypt, not just Iran against you, but now Egypt against you?
Gordon, from speaking to senior Israeli officials in Jerusalem last week, they are convinced that this Egyptian revolution is not going to end well. Really, the two most likely scenarios there are, number one, a Turkey-type scenario where Islamists, like the Muslim Brotherhood, anti-Western, anti-Israeli radicals, seize power through elections, a more gradual process. Or you could have something like 1979 in Iran, where it becomes a total, overtly jihadist state. Israelis don't think this is going to end well. The bottom line is they think the Muslim Brotherhood is the greatest beneficiary of this revolution. And not only the Brotherhood, Gordon, Iran. Iran is the elephant in the room right now. They are looking to spread their tentacles into Egypt, and I believe it's going to happen.
All right, Eric. Thanks for being with us.
Thank you, Gordon.
Keep praying for the peace of Israel. One of the things there's a street in Tehran that's named after the assassin of Anwar Sadat. And he was the one that signed the peace agreement, the Camp David Accords with Israel. And he was killed by a member of the Muslim Brotherhood. And there's a street in Tehran named in his honor for what he did. So what we're dealing with is a very sensitive situation. All the hope of a democracy coming to Egypt and fulfillment of prophecies in Isaiah, we need to pray that that comes to pass, that this kind of terror state or theocracy doesn't come to pass.
A former Planned Parenthood director is joining forces with the pro-life group Live Action. Abby Johnson worked at Planned Parenthood for 8 years until she was asked to hold the ultrasound scanner during an abortion. She saw the baby flinch before losing the fight for its life. That's what changed her mind. Johnson says she knows from experience that Planned Parenthood turns a blind eye to all kinds of abuses. Operation Blessing teams in the Philippines have concluded a week-long medical mission. The teams were able to visit 9 communities serving more than 10,000 people. They provided general medical and dental services and distributed wheelchairs to disabled children and adults. And more than 1,200 people professed their faith in Jesus Christ for the first time. You can find out more about Operation Blessing by going to their website at ob.org.